Hello and welcome to this webinar on how to protect your data against ransomware. Hopefully you'll find it informative and helpful. My name is Nathan Golden and I'm the President and CEO of Managecast. And on this webinar, we have two of our most important partners, Veeam and Cloudian, who will be speaking to how their technologies work together to provide robust ransomware protection. Amit from Cloudian will be talking about his company's innovative immutable storage solution, and Adam from Veeam has joined us as well, and together they will explain how they work together to provide bulletproof ransomware protected backups. And also feel free to submit any questions through the text or through the chat window, and at the end we will answer those questions. Go ahead, Amit. First, I'd like to take a few moments and explain who Managecast is. Next month, we will celebrate 21 years in business, and we are 100% focused on cloud backup and disaster recovery. It is all that we do. We provide backup as well as DR as a service, and Veeam represents 80% of our overall business. So they're definitely a key partner for us. Managecast has offices in Cincinnati, Ohio, and our primary data center is in downtown Cincinnati, and a secondary data center is in Royal Oak, Michigan. And we are a group of highly trained and experienced backup and DR professionals. And Managecast is SSAE SOC audited annually. And for any medical or HIPAA related companies, we are glad to enter into business associate agreements. Managecast began offering cloud backup in 2010. And we did this because we saw that our clients were struggling with following best practices and rarely, if ever, tested DR, or disaster recovery. And we found that rarely is backup someone's full-time job and can easily be neglected. So we chose to focus on backup and DR because our clients cannot always do this as well as they should. And we mainly see two types of cloud backup and DR service providers. The majority providers, I would say on the order of 90% or more, are utility providers. They provide little to no management, bare minimum service levels and support, and I look at them like the electric company. The responsibility to use that service is up to you. If you open up your window and run your air conditioning full blast, the electric company doesn't care. They will send you a large bill, and the responsibility for using their service is entirely up to you. On the other hand, a managed service provider like Managecast provides monitoring and management of the backup and DR solution. And we bring focus and expertise to bear, and we take on the operational requirements of managing backup and DR. And to highlight this further, I often refer to this iceberg picture. In our business, it's easy to see the price of a server, some storage, software, and think you know the costs involved with providing backup. However, like many solutions, the real cost is the operational management of the system, which is hard to see and calculate. Okay. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Amit from Cloudian, who will talk about healthcare and ransomware in particular, and then talk about how the Cloudian storage solution helps address these issues. Go ahead, Amit.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate that introduction. And hello, folks. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Today we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare systems and how ransomware impacts hospitals, medical institutions, and so on and so forth. Also, we'll address about why do some of these institutions pay, and also what are some of the best options for recovery and avoiding ransomware in general, right? To begin with, right, the challenge that most of the organizations, healthcare included, today face is managing and securing their critical asset, which is in today's world, that's their data, right? So what does data need protection from? We know when we look at data protection, we always want to protect our data against accidental deletions, malicious insiders, employee retaliation, as well as evidence tampering, right? These are your regular data loss prevention needs that every organization, including healthcare institutions, are well aware of. And it is critical for us to have a good data protection strategy to ensure business continuity in the digital age. But beyond that, right, your data needs protection from external threats as well. Okay, what are these threats? Ransomware, other kind of malware, hackers, and rogue apps. Ransomware specifically, and that's what we are here to talk about today. This this is the threat of our time, right? It is by far the fastest growing malware threat that targets users of all kinds today. It works by encrypting your user data and rendering it useless at the source. And you will be required to pay a ransom, which is typically in cryptocurrency and untraceable. Unfortunately, the ransomware decryption is not possible using the removal tools. You typically, if you're held for ransom, you eventually have to end up paying for that to decrypt your data, right? And beyond that, right, ransomware strikes very, very regularly, a lot more regularly in these days. In fact, today's uncertain times are fertile ground for malicious actors. If you look at what's happening in the last few months, you will see Russians attacked and took over North Carolina city and county government systems. Multiple reports of coronavirus and the COVID news being used to infiltrate enterprises to execute ransomware attacks. Heartbreaking stories and reports of hospitals and labs that are on the front line of the COVID fight are targeted. They don't have the time or bandwidth to be out of commission at this critical juncture. Even the WHO labs was attacked and held for ransom. These hackers have become ruthless, so much so that the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Agency of the DHS, which is CISA, had issued an alert across the board against these ransomware attacks and the fact that COVID is being used as clickbait to execute these attacks. So everybody should know and be aware that health institutions are big targets. In fact, if you look at some of the data available, healthcare has become the most targeted vertical for ransomware attacks. And if you look at just the dollars cost, it's already in the tens of billions of dollars that healthcare institutions are paying towards ransomware. Now, this is to pay the ransom. In some cases, it is the lost operations. It is also reputation costs and so on and so forth. But really, the bigger cost than just pure dollars, it is the impact to service disruption in healthcare. And this to healthcare institutions could have dire consequences. It could mean disruption to care and care provided. You're talking about emergency patients, in some cases getting redirected, medical records being inaccessible, and so on and so forth. In short, the cost of ransomware for healthcare goes beyond dollars. The real cost is in many ways immeasurable, right? More recently, we are also beginning to see an emerging trend. Cyber insurance, which is the fastest growing insurance segment and estimated to be upward of $5 billion in the coming years. The cyber insurance companies have now become more and more wary about ransomware threats. They have started, in some cases, refusing to provide healthcare institutions and other organizations with cyber insurance unless you have a proven strategy around recovery from ransomware. And we'll get into what that recovery strategy is in some time. In some cases, these institutions are offering 15 to 20% discount, and these are figures that we've seen coming across from multiple insurance companies, where you are seeing discounts, or in some cases even refusal to insure the business unless you have a proven data immutability strategy, so to speak. The financial recovery does not cover, even if you have cyber insurance, the lost reputation, the lost customers, the lost data, and in some cases, the lost service, as we've seen, right? So what does this mean, right? This means that your strategy against combating ransomware has become key for you to be able to insure. In most of the cases, data immutability is what your insurance companies are looking for. You will be able to get anywhere between 5 to 20% discount on your cyber insurance if you have a good strategy around around ransomware protection. And of course, it avoids the moral hazard of having to actually pay these ransoms or having your insurance company pay ransom if you have a way of recovering around it. Of course, it definitely ensures faster recovery and business continuity. So it is definitely becoming a trend of our times, right? So how do you stop these ransomware attacks, or how do you recover from some of these heinous attacks that happen to your business, right? So if you look at what the analysts have said, and a lot of our customers are also implementing, is the key to implementing a ransomware protection solution is immutable file system with an underlying worm storage target. Now, worm is acronym for write once and read many. And storage terms, this is what makes your data immutable or tamper-proof. So that's what Forrester talks about. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Adam from Veeam, who will give you a little bit of an understanding of how Veeam implements some of these technologies that can create a solution between Veeam and Cloudian to make your data immutable. Adam?
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that intro. Again, hi, everyone. My name is Adam Berg. I'm with Veeam Software. I want to give just a bit of an intro on who Veeam is to give you an understanding of where we sit in the marketplace. If you're not familiar with us as a company, quite simply, we're aiming to be the most trusted provider of your backup solutions that deliver cloud data management. And I'll explain what that means here in a moment. But overall, Veeam as an organization, what our goals are to deliver backup modernization for your organization, hybrid cloud acceleration, and in the focus of today's talk, data security and compliance, making sure that your data is always available for your organization, no matter the threats that are occurring in today's marketplace, especially against healthcare-related data, our most important data that we have. Veeam has an entire cloud data management platform. So if you're familiar with Veeam, or maybe you've heard about Veeam from several years ago, and we were known as this little upstart virtualization data protection company. We've grown quite a bit over the last few years, and we're an entire management platform these days. Whether it's of course our bread and butter of data backup and recovery, but increasingly now we're known as the market leaders in things like cloud mobility, monitoring analytics, orchestration and automation, and of course, the best in governance and compliance for your data. We're really all about delivering unmatched data management and protection. We're using your data to really drive new innovation for your organization across your on-premises data centers and your public cloud-based data centers, of course, enabling things like data reuse and leveraging orchestration and analytics to really derive more value out of your data today. And of course, making sure that your data is always available. And we're here to talk more about that with Cloudian and how our partnership here is really guaranteeing data availability. I talked about us not being this little company anymore. If you've known us from several years ago, we're greater than $1 billion in revenue. We're in 76% of the world's global 2,000 accounts. Over 400,000 customers today know Veeam as their data protection partner of choice. And it's not just that, but people really, really love Veeam. And our customer satisfaction routinely rates above companies like Netflix and Amazon and Cisco and VMware, which is quite remarkable. Those are some of the most well-loved tech companies out there today. So when you're working with Veeam, you're working with one of the very, very best and most satisfied customer focused businesses out there. And before we sort of get into the tech parts of this, where Veeam in the healthcare space is trusted by some of the largest healthcare providers the world over, whether it's companies that are using our Veeam Availability Suite to protect all of their on-premises data with data protection and analytics with the Veeam Availability Suite, to organizations protecting us, their cloud-based software as a service platforms like Office 365, with our the Veeam Office 365 data protection products, or even additional analytics and monitoring with Veeam Management Packs, which ties deeply into Microsoft SCOM for deeper analytics of your workloads. Veeam is being used by the largest healthcare organizations for a variety of different purposes. So don't hesitate to reach out if you're a healthcare provider to learn more about Veeam and what we have to offer your healthcare organization as well.
All right, and I'm going to quickly go over Cloudian. So for those who are unfamiliar with Cloudian, meet Cloudian. HyperStore, which is our flagship product, is an on-prem S3 compatible object storage. This is built natively on the S3 APIs. For those who are unaware or aware with just AWS S3 as being something that is offered in the public cloud system, AWS S3 is a product from AWS, a storage product which is built on the S3 APIs. Similarly, Cloudian HyperStore is an on-prem storage system built on the same APIs and follows as closely to the AWS S3 product, but on-prem. It offers you all the core capabilities of the cloud native platform in your data center, giving you exabytes of scalability and unmatched distributed storage system with a system able to start as low as a 3-node cluster and scaled into hundreds of petabytes to service all of your needs. We also support all the major clouds, working with the major clouds. So if you look at your cloud journey, most of the enterprises and the healthcare organizations today are looking at hybrid cloud, and Cloudian, along with the public cloud system, forms a perfect hybrid cloud solution. Any application that's built on or for Cloudian works in the public cloud and vice versa. The deployment options, you can reach out to Managecast, and they are a great partner and can provide you with all the options. But suffice to say, we started off, our roots are software-defined storage, so you can deploy Cloudian as a software storage system. We also have our own appliances, and we do offer meter usage as well. Some of our healthcare customers are listed here. By no means is this a complete list. We are a part of multiple health institutions, and healthcare is our fastest growing vertical. In fact, it is our number 2 vertical for storage, Cloudian storage to be installed in today. Okay. Getting into specifically the immutability part and how do we enable that? Well, it all comes from standard based approach that we have. So we natively support the S3 APIs, and as I mentioned, we are probably the most compatible S3 object storage on-prem that does that. So with that, in December of last year, we introduced our support for S3 object lock, which is fast becoming the de facto standard for implementing Veeam for data immutability in cloud object storage systems. Now, Veeam, as I mentioned, is write once, read many acronym, and ensures that once your data is written into the storage system, it is made tamper-proof, immutable, however you call it. Basically, you cannot change that data for a specific amount of time that has been specified in the retention management controls at the time of data creation. Very clearly, this is a stringent methodology of once you put your data in, it will be tamper-proof. And this is completely standards-based, and that is how we work seamlessly with Veeam, and we'll mention that in the coming slides. Right? We offer 2 modes of protection in S3 object lock. There's the governance mode. This is intended for data protection, but it is the less stringent mode, and more for DevOps or for inter-company departmental usage. So in this mode, you will have access from a privileged user login to be able to make modifications to the lock that has been implemented. And then there's the compliance mode, and this is the stringent mode, and this is what Veeam supports, and this is what our solution is about. This is the mode you would use for ransomware protection. In this mode, once data has been has landed into Cloudian in the compliance mode, it is locked for the duration that you have specified, and it cannot be deleted, modified in any way, shape, or form, even through the root user account. In fact, when Cloudian does this, it is considered and certified as one of the most stringent methodologies of creating a tamper-proof storage. And it's not just enough to say that you support object lock. In some cases, you also see now object lock and immutability being supported at the server level. But typically, what happens is if a hacker is sophisticated enough to get beyond your network firewalls, it's not unheard of for them to get access to your systems at the operating system level. Once that happens, they can go in and completely wipe off your storage system and get rid of all the data that's in object lock. So in that case, your object lock is completely moot. For that reason, Cloudian is actually being hardened. And when we ship the Cloudian devices in worm mode, you are also getting secure features like secure shell, integrated firewall, and access controls that are integrated to completely block off the system, even at the operating system level. In fact, in the worm mode, root access to Cloudian boxes is disabled, and we have certified our capabilities against a multitude of government certifications, and this all started with our DoD certifications with common criteria, FIPS 2.0, and then we went on and got regulatory certifications around SEC Rule 17A4, which specifies what exactly constitutes to a worm storage and how your root needs to be disabled in that. We are also certified against FINRA Rule 4511, CFTC Regulation 131, and we also have certifications against European specific obligations for ensuring all of these hardened features. If you're interested in reading more about it, we have the Coasset Associates report, the third-party report, which goes through Cloudian feature by feature and talks about how stringent our implementation is and how it makes your system completely tamper-proof. Adam, go ahead with talking about.
Yeah, so thank you for that intro and an explanation a bit about the capabilities in the Cloudian platform. So let's talk about Veeam and Cloudian together, and specifically protecting against ransomware. So I sort of want to start off with this, a bit of a rhetorical question, and why do organizations pay ransom, and why is this why is this so prevalent? Of course, if organizations, specifically healthcare organizations, didn't pay the ransom, then this wouldn't be a profitable endeavor for bad actors in malicious software writing. So I want to talk a little bit about shortcomings of traditional data protection and data availability, which essentially causes organizations to be forced to pay a ransom when they do get attacked. So what are some of these shortcomings? So one of the major shortcomings that we see as Veeam, as a data protection vendor, we've basically seen it all, is not having what we call an air-gapped version of your data, or air-gapped copy of your data, or storable copy of your data. Traditionally, people thought of air-gapping as a copy of the data that's offline, that can't be reached by something crawling your network, or call it a hacker or some rogue malicious software or malware in your environment. People would traditionally think of tape as a really good air gapping method. But traditionally, this concept of air gapping, or what qualifies of air gapping, has evolved. to a version of this data that is not directly connected to the backup infrastructure, to even the most modern definition of air gapping, of a version of your data that's protected against by alternate authentication methods and different API schemes. So for example, let's say you have a compromised a domain administrative account on a Windows network. You want to make sure that a version of your data is not accessible with that account, right? Even with that highest level domain administrator account, right? So separating account credentials and also separating by maybe an alternate connectivity method, an alternate API method is certainly now a modern definition of air gapping as well. A second shortcoming is not having a copy of that immutable data. Now, Amit really went through this definition of immutability, and I'll reiterate it here. An immutable copy of that data is data that, again, cannot be modified, deleted, or changed by, of course, any external bad actors, but also even internal threats, accidental or malicious internal threats as well, like accidental deletion, right? I mean, that's a big loss of data that we see all the time as Veeam. We see the support calls. I accidentally deleted my backups. Veeam, can you help us get these, this data back? Because I need to recover something right now. And in general, we're like, well, sorry, you guys deleted your data, right? So having an immutable copy of your data can protect traditional ransomware, which is going in to try to encrypt this data, right? So you have to pay the ransom to unencrypt it, or delete the backup copies, so that you have to unencrypt your primary source data from them, making you pay the ransom. So having a mutable copy of your data is essential to guaranteeing the availability of your data. So it's critical that number one, you look at air gapping solutions and include immutability as part of that data protection scheme. So that's really what Veeam and Cloudian have joined to do. So let's talk about what this solution actually is and what this looks like. So Veeam, of course, is your data protection engine that's actually taking data from the primary source, your production data, whether that's VMware, it's physical servers, it's Hyper-V, it's NAS, unstructured data, right? And protecting that onto a high performance backup tier. And then what we do through a policy within Veeam, very, very easy, very, very simple, is we have policies where we can immediately move a copy of that into the Cloudian HyperStore with object lock. Now, this covers both of our shortcomings that we mentioned before, which was an air-gapped copy of your data and creating an immutable copy of your data, all in one simple step. So this is a very, very easy to implement, and it's transparent to the organization. So when we're moving our protected data into a Cloudian HyperStore, of course, this is using an S3 API protocol that's transmitted over encrypted HTTPS. So this is qualifying as our air gapping. We have a separate authentication scheme, a separate API scheme, right? This is not like a Windows SMB share, right? This is a completely separate scheme. This is going to foil. This alone will foil a lot of the ransomware alone, because this qualifies as an air gapping solution. And then on top of that, Veeam works with an API, of course, an S3 API called Object Lock, which we can actually set individual timestamps on all of that data to prevent the modification or deletion of any of that data within the HyperStore. So we're enabling immutability at the same time as we're enabling air gapping. We're not losing any of that space efficiencies either on our data, and this is a very cost-effective way to make sure that your data is air-gapped and immutable. So how does this work under the covers? I'm going to get a little bit technical here, but it's built in to Veeam. Backup and replication is essentially a feature that we enable as part of what we call our scale-out backup repository. We attach a Cloudian S3 bucket directly to a Veeam repository, and then that becomes a mirror copy or tier for our data that you can enable basically with a single check mark box in your data protection policies. So it's really easy as part of our, Veeam's 3-2-1 data protection strategy. If you've ever heard that terminology before, but we've got this concept that you should really have 3 copies of your data to really protect against all data availability solutions. And certainly Cloudian falls into that policy very, very nicely. The way that we move this data is we actually copy that data into the Cloudian HyperStore, and we keep a copy of that metadata inside of our high-speed local repository, so we can do things like very, very fast lookups, very, very high-speed singular granular recoveries if we need to from the Cloudian HyperStore. We don't lose any of that performance that we're that we're famous for from data recovery when we enable data protection on a Cloudian HyperStore. So this is an elegant solution to a very complicated problem of air gapping and immutable data, but also not losing that performance, that reliability, and also the space efficiency that everyone has come to know with Veeam data protection solutions. Yep, and that and I kind of mentioned this already. Those restores are very seamless. When the Veeam operator, or your backup operators, this isn't like they have to be trained on any of this. Everything is transparent to them. It's all streamlined, and when they go to recover data, it just works. Our tagline with Veeam has always been, "It just works," and that's part of the reason why we have such a high satisfaction level for our software, because it's easy to operate. We make some under the covers sort of complexity super easy for the actual operators of the data protection software. I want to take you just through a little bit of an example of how this works, when we actually move data and lock it with the Object Lock API into a Cloudian HyperStore. So I'll take you through a little bit of an animation here of how this might work. In this example, we're setting a 3-day immutable policy on our data, but that doesn't mean that we're only retaining 3 days worth of data. But I can still have a policy of 60, 90 days, 2 years retention on a Cloudian HyperStore, but I might only want to enable immutability on that data that's most likely to be recovered in a ransomware attack. So in this example here, I'm going to take a full backup on a Monday, and it lands in my performance tier, and I'm actually going to immediately move a version of that data directly into the HyperStore and lock those blocks of data. So they become completely immutable at that point on the as they reside in the Cloudian HyperStore. And then as we move down, we take incremental backups on Tuesday. They move over to the Cloudian and they become locked. Wednesday, so forth, and they become locked. And as we roll through our individual days, they become locked, and then we maintain our policy of enabling 3 days worth of locking here. So this policy is very, very customizable. You can set your own individual, we call SLA policies, the kind of agreement policies you have for the business on how much locked data we're going to guarantee is available for your data. But essentially, you set the policy, and Veeam and Cloudian take care of the rest, and we make sure that as you move through your traditional backup cycles, the appropriate number of days are remaining locked in the Cloudian HyperStore at the individual object and block level inside the Cloudian. So very, very easy, very transparent. And again, just to enable this is, again, it's like a one-click operation. It's very, very powerful.
Okay, thanks, Adam. I appreciate that. Thanks you also, Amit, for going over the Cloudian solution. Here's some additional contacts for you. So if you have any questions about Veeam and the Cloudian solution working together, John Speakman here at Managecast would be happy to help you out with that. And then here's Adam's info from Veeam, and on the Cloudian side, we have Steve Lloyd as a good contact person if somebody wants to reach out with technical questions about the Cloudian solution. But again, as Managecast, we're happy to try to answer those questions for you as well. And with that, I think we have some questions maybe from the audience that we can take.
That sounds good.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good. Let's do that. Let's
see. One of the questions is, on the last slide or so there, Adam, you had 3 days on the slide. And the question is what's a common time for setting that retention policy or that lock period?
Yeah.
Is it 3 days? Is it a month? What's a common setting for that?
Right. So one of the things that you need to realize is that using immutability might increase your actual storage utilization. Right. So we have a lot of there's really no best practice here of how much data you should set as immutable with as it resides in the Cloudian HyperStore. We've seen everything from just a couple of days all the way to 2 weeks to a month. It's really up to your organization of specifying how much data do we want to guarantee is available with this immutability technology. But that doesn't mean that's the only data that that you're protecting, or that that's not the entire length of your data. What we do sort of in general recommend is that immutable data there is to protect against ransomware and malicious actors, right? So most commonly, you're going to want to, at least at the bare minimum, think about what you're going to restore in the event of an attack, and a ransomware attack. So you want to make sure that you're at least guaranteeing, I'm going to, in the event of an attack, this is the data set that I want to make sure is guaranteed that I have available to recover. But by all means, you could make your entire data protection policy immutable if you so desire, right? It's completely flexible and it's completely up to each organization. You just specify the number of days that you want to make sure that that you want to retain as immutable on the Cloudian HyperStore. So very, very easy.
And I can chime in a little bit and add some flavor to this. So from a Cloudian side, we've seen this being set to as low as 7 days to as much as 60 days. And interestingly, in the ransomware scenario, typically 30 to 60 days is the average. But some cyber insurance company, and this is a real example, required their insurees to get 60 days of immutable data. That was a requirement. And when Veeam brought us into that account, we worked together on that. And, in that case, 60 days was the right solution they needed. But in some other cases, we've also seen customers wanting years of immutability. It may not have been for necessarily ransomware protection. They were mostly looking for compliance. But in that case, you got to be cognizant of the fact that the storage requirements go up. So that's when you work with the customer and design a system that optimizes not just the immutability part, but also from a cost efficiency perspective, what makes sense. So it totally depends on the use case, on the customer scenario, and what works in certain situations.
Okay, so like with many things in IT, it depends. Right?
Well, yeah, it's important to have products that are flexible for any situation, and Veeam and Cloudian certainly are.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people will come in and think I have immutability, I have a 7-year retention policy, so why don't I turn on 7 years of immutability?
Yeah,
which
no,
sounds great,
but
that creates some issues. And
yeah,
so before you set a long retention, we may want to.
Yeah, and just to color that a little bit more is, typically when customers say they need a 7-year retention, that doesn't mean they're keeping daily backups for 7 years, for example, right? They might typically roll up their weeklies into monthlies, and their monthlies into quarterlies, and their quarterlies into yearlies, right? So that's typically how most organizations will keep a long-term data retention. If you're setting immutable policies, remember that data cannot be deleted or modified in any way. So typically the immutable stuff is your dailies, right? So, if you're setting 7-year retention, typically it's not feasible from a storage utilization to keep 7 years of daily changes for 7 years, for example, right? So when your data is immutable, there is some architectural differences and challenges there when you're trying to keep really long retentions from doing those roll-ups and expiring of data when you do roll up that data. So do talk with your architects, Veeam and Cloudian are standing by to help you architect the proper solution for your organization.
Yeah, and let me clear up any kind of confusion there too. I mean, it's perfectly, or you can validate this, but it's perfectly okay to use, say, Cloudian for long-term retention for the 7 years of retention.
Oh, yeah.
But only maybe 30 days of that is set to be immutable, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you can still use it for that long-term retention. You just have to define what that policy is that you want to be on the immutable.
Yeah, and remember, there's that data is still considered air gapped, right? So it's still very, very much protected from the most common types of ransomware and things that attack, in a traditional fashion, attacking primary data, right?
Okay. All right, I got another question here, and I'm not sure how to answer that. Hopefully somebody on our panel here does, but does Cloudian protect against exfiltration of data? And first of all, can somebody explain what exfiltration of data is to me?
Yeah, I'll take that first one.
Good.
I'll take that first one. So, commonly when we think about ransomware, we think about crypto viruses or crypto malware, right? That are coming in and encrypting your data, encrypting your primary data, and then basically making you pay a ransom to, and then they send over the decryption keys, and you decrypt your data, and then you're back in business. Some newer flavors of ransomware, or second type of ransomware, is what we call exfiltration ransomware. This is where they actually exfiltrate or remove data from your network, essentially uploading your data, externally, back to the ransomware makers, and they hold your data for ransom, and they basically say, we're going to embarrass your company by leaking this data unless you pay us a ransom, right? So this is another flavor of ransomware called exfiltration ransomware, right? So you need to make sure that you're also thinking about these kinds of attacks as well. And I'll let Amit kind of talk to this a little bit further, right? Now that I've kind of set the stage for what exfiltration ransomware is.
And it's actually such a good question, because the solution that we just went over with object lock, right? That is specifically designed to protect against the first kind of ransomware attack, which is the crypto attack. Worm storage specifically talks about you can write once, but you can read as many times. Now, in exfiltration, if your hacker is going to try and read your data and is able to read it and put it on the internet, hold it for ransom, saying that if you don't pay, I'm going to show it, that solution won't work. So in those kind of scenarios, you're really looking at the hardened storage and the hardened solution aspect of it, right? So if you look at what Veeam and Cloudian provide together, you are looking at data in motion and data at rest security features that are already baked into the system. Now, the connection between Veeam and Cloudian, Veeam actually requires it that it has to be over SSL for data in transit. You use HTTPS connections. On the Cloudian side, you can encrypt your data with AES 256 server-side encryption for data at rest security, and I believe you can initiate this from the Veeam side as well. Yeah, we talked about secure shell on the Cloudian side. We talked about role-based access controls. We talked about audit trail logging. Now, all of these security features, when implemented in the right manner, that's what you want to protect yourself against the exfiltration part of the attack. So even if the hacker is able to get into the system, they can see the data, but they cannot really make anything out of it. And on the other side, with object lock, they cannot modify or delete the data. So you're really protected around all different type of attacks and all different flavors of ransomware at that point.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one last quick question here. Does Veeam Immutability cost extra? They already own Veeam. Do they have to buy something extra to use Immutability?
Yeah, this is a great question, and one that I love to answer, because the capability is absolutely free. So if you already are a Veeam customer, you already have Veeam licensing. This is an included capability that you can just enable, right, to enable immutability features. Of course, the target platform that you're going to has to support this capability called Object Lock API support, which Cloudian certainly does. But this is not going to cost you another penny from Veeam to enable this capability. So go out there, if you're a Veeam customer, talk to your Cloudian provider about bringing in a Cloudian solution to help enable this capability for you today. So we're really excited about that, and be sure to reach out to your Cloudian and Veeam reps to talk to us a bit more about it.
Great. Well, I appreciate you all taking time to join us here, and hopefully the audience learned some things. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Adam, for that valuable information. And again, anybody needing additional time or want to talk about your specific use case, we or Cloudian or Veeam are available to discuss that with you. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the webinar. And again, appreciate your time, and please have a good day.
Thanks
everyone.
everybody.